Hello there and welcome to part 2 of sewing the Cozy Pyjama Set. In the first part, we made the top. Now it's time to sew the pants and complete the set. If this is the only part you are watching, welcome, but I recommend that you go back and watch the part 1, not just for the full instructions, but for a solid pyjama confession at the beginning. I am making the long leg version in this video, but the short one is exactly the same, so you can follow if you're sewing the short version as well. As I mentioned in the first part, you can get the pattern as a bundle on my Etsy shop. It includes 10 sizes from XX small to 5X large. It's roomy, it's cozy, it's a little bit oversized, so if you prefer it like more fitted, you can size it down, but make sure to check the size chart first. So you'll need a couple of things for this project besides your fabric: 2 cm wide elastic for the waistband, 4 buttons, and piping if you choose to use it. Piping is optional, but it does add a really nice touch. And if you prefer not to use the piping, just follow the same steps and skip anything that mentions the piping. You'll also find details about how much fabric you need and how many pieces to cut from each pattern piece inside the sewing instructions. And I'm still on the quest to hit the 5,000 followers on Instagram, so it would be amazing if you could be the one to help me get there. And without further ado, let's start sewing.
I lay a front leg piece in front of me with the right side facing up. There's a notch at the center of the side seam edge and inseam, and I'm marking them to make them easier to see. And I'm doing the same thing for the other leg. Since the fabric I'm using looks the same on both sides, I'm placing a piece of tape labeled back on the wrong side to help you follow along. Now I take the back pieces and lay them in front of me. Just like the front pieces, there are notches at the center of both the side seam and the inseam, so I go ahead and mark those too. The back pieces have an extra notch right at the center of the hem edge, so I marked that one as well. Again, I add back stickers to the wrong side just to keep things clear. Now I take one front and one back piece and place them right sides together with the side seams aligned. I use the notches to make sure everything is positioned correctly, then pin along the side seam. I stitch the side seam with a 1 cm seam allowance using a straight stitch. After sewing, I finish the raw edges with an overlock stitch, then press the seam allowance toward the back leg piece to help it sit flat and clean. Now let's attach the hem piece. This side is front and this side is back. I can tell because there's a notch at the center of the seam. I place the hem piece in front of me. There is one notch near the center and this will match with the side seam of the pants. And the other notch is placed closer to the one side. I mark both notches to make them easier to see. This will match the notch on the center of back pants hem. Again, I'm placing my back sticker on the wrong side to help you follow along. I do the exact same thing but mirrored for the other side. Now I flip the piece wrong side up. I remove the sticker and fold the hem piece in half lengthwise, wrong sides touching, aligning the long edges together. I press it well to create a center crease. This creates a nice crease down the center that will help the folding later on, and then reattach the sticker to the wrong side. We are going to place our piping along the edge where I marked my notches. Piping is simply a narrow fabric strip cut on bias with a cord inside. With the right side facing up, I place the piping along the edge of the hem aligning the raw edges and pin it in a couple of places. Using a zipper foot, I stitch along the edge with a 1 cm seam allowance, staying close to piping cord. Now let's attach the hem piece to the pants. I match the center notches of both pieces, placing the edge of the hem with the piping on the bottom edge of the pants, right sides together. I also match the back notch placement. I pin all along the edge, feeling for the piping cord and keeping the pins right along the seam allowance line. Then I sew along the pinned edge with a 1 cm seam allowance, again staying close to the piping. I place the pants wrong side up and press the seam allowance downward. With the pants right side facing up, I fold the pants in half lengthwise, bringing the inseam edges together and matching them at the notch. Then I trim the excess piping on both ends of the hem. To make sure the piping ends align in a clean circle, I use the piping seam lines as a guide and pin both layers together along the seam line. And I also stick a pin through at the top of the piping as I feel them with my fingers. I pin along the entire edge, then I sew along this edge with a 1 cm seam allowance. I make a small snip inside the seam allowance on the piping so it doesn't add bulk or feel uncomfortable inside the pants. I finish the raw edge with an overlock stitch. And then I press the seam from front to back. I remove the stickers since we don't need them anymore. As you can see, the piping meets up beautifully at the seam. And I also overlock the very end of the pants hem in a circle. Now, using the crease made earlier, I fold the hem inward. That crease helps make sure the fold is even and clean all the way around. I pin through both layers along the seam line, and this prevents the hem from twisting or shifting while sewing. Then, I start pinning along the line where the piping meets the hem. I pin all the way around, making sure everything stays in place. I also check from the inside to make sure the pins are about 1 cm from the overlocked edge. I sew from the right side, following the pinned line, which is right between the piping and the hem piece. As I reach each pin, I remove it and gently pull the piping and hem apart as I go, so my stitching lands right in the seam line. Once the first pant leg is done, I follow the exact same steps for the second one. After finishing both legs, I place them in front of me, ready for the next step. I turn one of the legs inside out. It doesn't matter which one. Then I insert the leg with the right side facing out into the one that's inside out, so their right sides are touching. I line up the inseam lines, placing them directly on top of each other. To make sure they are perfectly aligned, I insert a pin straight through the inseam seam line of one leg and check that the pin comes out right through the seam line of the other. I secure it by placing the pin back through the same seam line. Then, I align the front and back rise edges, front to front and back to back. I pin along the entire center seam from one end to the other. I sewed the two legs together with a 1 cm seam allowance using a straight stitch. After sewing, I overlock the entire edge to secure it and prevent fraying. Then I press the seam allowance in the direction where the knee side of the overlock stitch is facing up. Let's move on to sewing the waistband. When cutting the waistband piece on the fabric fold, make sure to include the center triangle notch. You'll need to align everything properly later. On either side of that triangle, you'll see 2 more notches. These will line up with the side seams of your pants. There are also notches on the short edges. Again, I'm placing my back sticker on the wrong side. Then, fold it in half and place the short edges together, right sides touching. Use the center notches to align them and sew along the short edge with a 1 cm seam allowance. Press the seam allowances open, one to each side, so it lays nice and flat. Now fold the waistband in half lengthwise, align the long edges with the right sides facing out, wrong sides touching. Match all the notches and pin all the way around the edge. Sew along the raw edge with a 1 cm seam allowance, but before sewing, just be sure to leave a 10 cm opening on the back, 5 cm to either side of the back center seam. You'll need this opening later to insert the elastic. I begin sewing at one mark and sew all the way around and stop when I reach the other one. Now that the waistband is ready, let's bring all of them together. The triangle notch at the front of the waistband should align with the center front seam of the pants. The side notches align with the side seams of the pants, and the waistband seam line aligns with the center back seam. I bring all of those notches and seam lines together and place a pin on them one by one. Once all notches are matched, add a few more pins around the waist for security. And just like before, I'm stitching from one mark to the other, but leaving that 10 cm opening untouched. Otherwise, we won't be able to get the elastic in. Sew the waistband to the pants with a 1 cm seam allowance, leaving the opening unstitched. Everything is coming together nicely at this point. It's time to feed the 2 cm elastic through the opening. You can use a bodkin or safety pin to guide it, whatever works best for you. I will use my bodkin. You can find the recommended elastic lengths for each size in the sewing instructions manual. I'm making a size medium, so I'll be using 65 cm. But feel free to adjust this based on the type of elastic you are using. Just test it around your waist and go with what feels comfortable. I push the elastic all the way around the waistband tunnel until I pull it out the other end. I make sure both elastic ends stay outside the opening because we'll need them both to finish the waistband. And I also make sure it is not twisted inside of the tunnel. Then I draw a line 1 cm in from each end of the elastic. Then I place these lines on top of each other and sew them together securely. But like I said, before you stitch, double check the elastic isn't twisted. Now it is time to close the opening we left earlier, sewing the waistband edge shut. First, I align the waistband seam lines. Then, match that seam line with the center back seam line of the pants. As I sew the back waistband section, I gently stretch the fabric. This keeps the waistband evenly distributed. I'm being careful not to catch the elastic itself, just sewing through the fabric. I turn the pants inside out and then overlock the entire waistband seam allowance for a tidy finish. I'm being really careful to overlock only on the seam allowance here, making sure the pants themselves don't get caught. If you do it in the same direction I'm doing here, the neat side of your overlock will end up facing outward, which gives a much cleaner look. To keep the elastic from twisting in the wash later, you can also sew a line straight across the back waistband right through the center. Give yourself a high five, you made this with your own hands.
And just like that, the pants are done. And Cozy Pyjama Set is now complete. I hope this project will bring you a little bit of joy and comfort into your day. And if you didn't see part 1 where we did the top, I recommend that you go ahead and check that one out, especially if you want the full set. You'll find the link in the descriptions down below. Pattern is now available in my Etsy shop as a bundle. It includes long version and short version, from XX small to 5X large. I put a lot of love designing this pattern, so I'd be so happy to see it come to life through your hands. If you end up sewing this set, feel free to share it on Instagram and please tag me. I love to see your versions, so let's spread some coziness. Thanks for being here and I'll see you in the next one.